Hey there, it's kind of a gloomy day here in Southern California. Perfect day to tell you the story of Why So Many Guitars Electric Edition The Lost Years. I had mentioned my first three electrics in the previous two videos, the first one being the Ibanez 175 Lawsuit model. My second guitar being a Les Paul that I bought from a friend of mine that was kind of one of those fretless wonders from the early 70s, and it wasn't very playable. And I guess I wasn't just much of a Gibson guy, but my next guitar was an Ibanez Artist that I traded that Gibson for, that Les Paul for. So, and at this point I'm still in Indiana. I'm still wanting to move to Los Angeles to be a session guitar player. And I also wanted to get a Les Paul again. And there was this guitar hanging at the IRC Music in Castleton, which is on the north side of Indianapolis, hanging on a wall. It'd been hanging there for a while, and every time I picked it up, I played it, and I loved it. It was amazing. And I thought, you know what? If I'm going to get a Les Paul, why not get the best Les Paul I could possibly get? And it was a Gibson L5-S. Now, Gibson L5s are hollow body jazz guitars, been around forever. The Gibson L5-S was a solid body, and clearly I don't have that guitar anymore. It was a beautiful guitar, blonde, tiger stripe, maple. The back, the plate, you know, where you would access the electronics was actually made out of a piece of wood that probably came from the guitar or was cut from somewhere else and put in there, but it looked like it matched. I'll put a picture up so you can see what that model looked like. The problem with it, and I don't know this for a fact, and I'm sure there's some people out there that are educated about L5Ss, but one of the problems with this guitar was it wasn't really much of a Les Paul. It kind of had it was kind of neck heavy. And it also had I think, weak pickups. The pickups weren't as hot as your typical Les Paul because it was basically supposed to be a jazz guitar for guys who wanted to have a solid body jazz guitar. There weren't a lot of those around at the time. So, I played that for a while, used it, maybe had it a year and a half. It was the most I'd ever spent on a guitar. And then as I was getting closer to moving to Los Angeles, I decided I needed some kind of Strat. So I traded that in for a G&L, and I can't remember the model that it was, but it had kind of humbuckers with coil tap switches and everything. And the coil taps on it sounded much better than the one on the previous video, that the Gibson or the Ibanez Artist that I showed you in the previous video. So it was a fairly usable guitar. Had a nice whammy bar. First guitar I ever had with a whammy bar on it, so that was kind of fun. You know, Eddie Van Halen had been out for a couple of years, and that was a big deal. I was really getting into Steve Lukather and Toto and stuff like that, so I felt like I needed to have a guitar that could kind of do that kind of thing. And that guitar, so I traded the Gibson L5-S for the G&L that I had. That I ended up getting, and then with my classical guitar, my Gibson or my Ibanez 175 and my Ibanez Artist, and then the G&L, with those four guitars I moved to California and to take on the world of music. And so I was clearly way underprepared. Shortly after that, I found this guitar. One of my students was selling his Strat, a Fender Strat, and it was amazing. It was a great Fender Strat, and it had belonged to this guy named Caleb Quay, who is now a pastor. But prior, you know, back in the 70s, in the 60s, he was a schoolmate and a best friend with Elton John. And then when Elton John got famous, he ended up being Elton John's guitar player, and did that for years until he, and this is in his biography, so he won't mind me saying, but he basically got hooked on cocaine and pretty much lost all his money and all his possessions and everything. But he still had some of his guitars, and that was one of the guitars that he had in the Elton John years. He sold it to a friend of mine. My friend of mine sold it to me, and it was the most amazing guitar. It was so good sounding, and I was doing recordings with it. I was going direct into the mixing board and recording. The thing just sounded, I have a couple recordings with it from back in the day, but not a lot, because I was playing at a club in Los Angeles, and after our set I put all my gear to the side of the stage and was talking to some friends, and when I went back to pick it up, it was gone. Couldn't be anywhere to be found. And so I called the police. They showed up. They basically said, yeah, there's nothing we can do. Do you have the serial number? And I said, oh yeah, I got the serial number. It's right here on my keychain. I had taken the neck plate. Actually, the previous owner had replaced the neck plate with a brass one, had taken the original neck plate off and put it on his keychain. And when I was walking out of his house with it, he said, hey, you may want this. And I said, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I'll put it on my keychain. And from the day I bought it, it's been on my keychain. To this day, it's still on my keychain. I don't know why. It's kind of like this horrible reminder every time I pick up my keys that I lost this most amazing Strat that I'll never find again. And I finally, years later, met Caleb Quay and reminded him about that guitar. And he said, do you want me to tell you what songs I played that guitar on? Because I think I can remember. And I said, no, I don't want to know. So anyway, I was pretty penniless and had no Strat and no, I just had my Ibanez's. And I had the G&L, but I wanted another Strat, so I bought a kind of a Franken-Strat that I don't have. I think I got it for $200 at a place called Guitar in North Hollywood. And it did the job for a while, but pretty soon it wasn't great. It was just kind of a parts guitar that somebody threw together and got rid of. So it wasn't a great guitar. Years ago I loaned it to a student and I haven't seen it since. And so there was a store in Pasadena and I went there and saw another Ibanez. So here's my third Ibanez. It was an Ibanez Roadstar, and I'm not going to play it because the strings are so rusty. I might hurt myself. But it's got a huge, the Floyd Rose type bridge. Is it actually Floyd Rose or Kaler? Yeah, Floyd Rose. It had the lockers, the locking nuts up there, which I don't have on there anymore. I have them still, but I don't have them on anymore. I'll fix this up and maybe get it going again, because I can't have too many different sounding guitars, as I've said in the past. Kind of the reason for this whole series, because every guitar is different and you never know which one you're going to need at that moment. The sound you're looking for, whatever. And then also something like this I could string up in some weird way so that I have it ready to go if I need it. Okay, so I hope this was interesting. I promise the next video will have a guitar in it, and I'll plug it in, and we'll hear it and everything. So God bless you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Have fun. I'm not playing it. I'm putting it down. Yeah. Rusty.